Hi everyone, I'm here, Riza with Full Awakening, giving you today our weekly nugget. Usually I try to do this on Thursday, and unfortunately I had a lot of work yesterday and I fell asleep during the time that I was supposed to do this. So naps, yes, naps can be important. But I'm here today with our little golden nugget, and the title of it is Winds of Change. We had some incredible winds come in through our area last night, and this was part of the inspiration for this talk, which I wanted to do last night, except my kids got home and they are their own winds of change. So I had to switch focus from work mode to mom mode. But I'm here, I just checked in with Spirit, and the message is the same. They've deepened it for me a little bit and let me know more of what they were meaning last night with the information they gave me. I have a tarot card that I've picked, which actually fits in really well with today's message. And today I decided to do something a little bit different. So not only did I do a reading for the collective, for the group that will be watching this video in the future, but I also did what I do for my client sessions, which is I wrote a poem. So the way that Spirit talks to me, the way that the Council of 17 talks to me is usually in images and in feelings. So I get like sort of a silent movie image, story, pantomime, and I feel that move through my body, and as it moves through my body, I feel certain emotions, and those emotions get translated into meaning and eventually into words. So when I ground a reading in poetry form, which poetry is always something that I've been drawn to in my life and have done since I was very young, when I ground it into poetry form, it's a way of me really anchoring the reading, and then I have a lot more information than I had before. So I'm going to read you this channeled writing that is the poem aspect of the reading, and then I'll describe the image in a little bit more detail. That will give us some, I don't know, something to go off of. It'll give us the groundwork or the container for us to have our conversation about what this winds of change really means. Okay, so here we go. This is the poem. The winds of change are upon us. To thine own self be true. Open your eagle eyes and see what is carried on this wind, and whether you want to invite this wind to blow through your corridors, the corridors of your body. We each get to decide. We each get to decide when to take shelter and when to ride. Do you see this wind that weaves infinitely around your heart? This is the wind. For when you open your arms, this is the wind that strengthens and supports as you grow strong and remember who you truly are. You were once a seed seeking the light, now a sapling spreading your branches out wide, reaching for those wet clouds in the sky. To thine own self be true. No one will grow to be the same as you. So it's funny, this poem has some rhyming aspects to it. I don't generally find rhyme popping out in my poems, so it's always funny when it does. And there's a few interesting themes in this particular reading. So the image I was getting was this wind, these various winds, and we with our human eyes generally aren't able to see the wind, except we can see the wind moving through other things. And we can feel it on our body and in our skin. And so we have an idea of what this wind might be, but we can't really see it with our physical human eyes. Other creatures can. We know that there's creatures that can see the ultraviolet spectrum, so they can see colors we can't see. Well, there's certain creatures like eagles that can actually see the physical wind, and they need to be able to find the updrafts and be able to fly effectively. So this is always one of those subjects that fascinates me and encourages me to think about the seeming limitations of our human senses, and also the potential for those senses to be widened with our internal cultivation of those senses. So in a lot of shamanic practices, we think of the wind as spirited. The wind is ensouled. And it's not just one greater soul of wind, although air is its own elemental, right? It's also carrying other spirits on it. And so the image was really interesting. The image was of a person standing at the edge of a cave. And in my work, we work with the cave image a lot for the heart. So the heart is like this cave where this fire is always lit. It's this primal, eternal, timeless part of you. And so I kind of see the person standing at the entryway to this heart cave and witnessing this wind and getting a sense for what this wind is. And discerning, which is a really important part of any spiritual evolutionary or consciousness evolutionary process, is the ability to discern, is this wind for me? Is this wind mine? And if the wind is not yours and the wind doesn't feel like something you need to allow to move through you, you can move into the cave and allow it to move past and on its way. But if the wind is yours, and what Spirit showed was this wind that was like moving in this infinity sign around the center, around the heart, around this cave and around your body. If the wind feels instinctively like it is yours and it's there to support you, then you can move out into the environment and allow it to blow through your bodies. You can allow it to move energy. You can allow it to move things out and through you and allow it to strengthen you. So when I was getting that image, one of the things that I work with a lot is the emotions, the emotional energies as the idea of emotional winds. And I wanted to offer that to you guys because this is a tool that I use across the board with all of my clients, all of the ceremonies I hold. If it ever pops into my mind, I immediately share this perspective because it has helped me personally so much in working with emotions. And as humans, you know, we desire to feel as much as possible, and I think that, culturally, we've learned a lot of ways of numbing our emotions out because some emotions are really painful and overwhelming and upsetting to feel. And one of the things that I think makes emotions so difficult is actually our over-identification with them. So even the way that our language works, we tend to say, I feel sad, or I am sad. I am sad, right? Like I am sadness. And the thing is if we de-identify with emotions, if we start to think of emotions as their own entities, right? That sadness is a being. The movie Inside Out, which is a kid's movie, did this beautifully, right? It personified all those emotions as their own entities that live inside of us. And instead, I'm asking us to think about emotions as things that live outside of us and move through us, move either up and out or through us like a wind. And so I use that analogy out of the wind as a way of describing emotions. We can think of all the emotions that humans are capable of feeling as being their own entities, their own spirits that are carried on the wind, and that we can choose the way that we interact with that wind. So the two different terrains that I like to bring up, because I like to think of the body as a little micro earth. This body is our gift from the earth, and so is the earth in a fundamental way. And we can use our creative imaginations and our journey skills and our visioning skills to envision what kind of terrain we are and what kind of terrains live in our bodies, right? And we can do this as a way of talking about the winds. So let's talk about how wind moves through a inner city landscape. I'm near Chicago here in my home, and I grew up here. And so when you're downtown in Chicago among all these huge skyscrapers or in any big urban center, and you've got these angular metal and glass and, these hard, angular, sharp buildings, the wind travels into that inner city setting and it creates microclimates. It creates eddies and whirlpools, and it just creates turbulence where there wasn't turbulence before. So if you've ever been in an inner city situation where it's been windy and you've walked past a certain building and you just feel like you've been slapped across the face because that wind has just been waiting, waiting to hit you against that sharp glass or metal edge. And that is what happens when we, as our inner landscape, brace ourselves against the emotion that's trying to travel through our bodies, right? If we think about sadness, for instance, or grief as a wind, and it starts to blow through our bodies and we don't like it and it doesn't feel good, and we decide to be hard and strong and we decide to resist the way that a skyscraper would resist, we create a microclimate. That emotion gets stuck. in our bodies. Even if we're trying to push it down or push it to the side, or we're trying not to feel it, it's still in there and it's wreaking havoc on our insides, right? And if we hold an energy like that for too long, longer than it's intended to, it creates illness. We literally will get a bellyache. We'll literally have diarrhea. We'll literally get a headache, right? It's a lot of use of the word literally, but things start to happen physically when energy is off. Energy precedes form. And anything that's exhibiting itself in form has existed in energy longer than it's existed in form. So it really, really matters how we handle, how we interact, how we collaborate with these emotional winds. The second image I want to bring up is that of a forest. So if you've ever been in the deep woods, or especially like an aspen tree forest with all those little glittery leaves, and you've heard a wind pass through the forest, the trees open to the wind, right? The trees spread themselves wide. They open to the wind. They allow their branches to be flailed about. They allow their leaves to sing and to dance. And that wind creates music. That wind creates movement. And those trees are so brave, right? Because they might lose branches. They'll definitely lose leaves. Sometimes the entire tree is uprooted and knocked right over. And the tree allows it because the tree knows that the wind has to express itself. And so it allows the wind to move through. And then the wind just keeps passing through, right? So that grief or that sadness or whatever emotion you're feeling, if you can name it, if you can notice it, and if you can allow it to move through you, then it can be a really freeing and really beautiful experience. And we don't have to identify with it. You know, just because you feel sadness or just because you feel grief doesn't mean you are sadness or that you are grief. It means you're experiencing that wind. So I think that was, that was sort of what was pinged for me in this reading that we did about getting to discern what kind of winds are for you and not for you. And when they are for you, allowing them to strengthen your understanding of yourself, your body, and the courage with which you engage with that information, because ultimately we're all trying to grow and we are all so unique. And so how we each do that, like every tree is completely different in a forest, right? Every tree starts out as a seed with a sprout that longs for the sun, comes above the earth and starts to grow as a sapling. The wind will strengthen that sapling as the sapling reaches up towards the sky. And as it does that, it has its own journey. And so no two trees will look alike. No two trees have the same kind of branches, the same formation, the same shape. And so is true with humans. We all are shaped by our environment, our upbringing, our history, our families, our own specific consciousness and perspective. And we're all so unique, and the world needs us that way. We need to be unique. So lastly, I'm going to show you the card that I picked. So I was thinking of all this, and I chose a card, and I love this card that I chose. It is the Strength card. So this is part of the Major Arcana. It's card number 8. Let's see, everything's reversed in this camera, so it's still a little confusing for me. Yeah, so you see that there's a man here holding the green man face. So it's a mask that symbolizes, the woodland, the divine masculine of the woods, the divine masculine of the earth. And he is holding his hand over this lion's head, and they're sharing this space together. So this is a really interesting card. It talks about strength, but in terms of patience and acceptance. So this man is not trying to tame, or this person, I guess gender is not important, but this person is not trying to tame this lion with force of will. He's not trying to dominate this lion. He's sharing space with this lion, and he is accepting of this lion and who this lion is. And so this is very related, actually, to this conversation about emotions, and this idea that in order to be with our emotions doesn't mean to dominate or force them into any other shape. It means to allow them and accept them and understand them so that they can be truly who they are. We don't want to manipulate the emotions. We want to just feel them and allow them to blow through us. So it takes so much courage to do that. And we think about the courage of the trees and their ability to open to the wind and their ability to risk their lives for that. And they don't really totally have a choice, right? They can't run away. They can't go back into the heart cave and move out of the wind. Every wind that comes for them is a wind for them. So we could learn a lot from our ancestors, the trees. And I just want to offer that to you guys because I know that I myself have been experiencing a lot of emotional turmoil and a lot of emotional winds in the last couple weeks, and I think other people have been too. When I have really strong experiences and I start to hear whispers of other people having similar experiences, then I know it's not just personal, it's planetary, and that doesn't necessarily make it totally softened around the edges, but it does feel a little bit more like a cradling embrace. I'm able to have empathy that I'm feeling something that a lot of other people are feeling. And so I know by virtue of the wind that we have outside my front door and by the energy that's moving through this country of the US alone, including also moving through the whole world, we are going through a time of tumult, a time of change, and a time of defining what we stand for and defining how strong and how courageous we can be in that face of change. So that's my nugget for this week. And I hope that it gives you a little bit of courage and a little bit of strength to carry on, to be gentle with your hearts, to stand out of the wind if it is not for you, and to open to the wind if it is. So much love to each of you for who you are and what you bring. I bow to you, and I hope you have a good day. Okay, bye.